Today's conversation is one that I have been looking forward to for a very long time because my guest spent 25 years inside the systems most of us only hear about when something has already gone wrong. Linda Denton-Harris is an author and family court advocate who lived through family court and child protective services, first as a mother who asked for help, and later as a grandmother fighting to protect her own grandchildren. Her new book, They're Not Here to Help, An Advocate's Guide to Surviving Family Court, CPS, and the Systems That Profit from Families, is not a memoir. It is documented evidence of how these systems actually work and what families can do about it. Linda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to this interview.
Your book opens with a line that stops people in their tracks. It is not a memoir. When I said that, it is evidence. What made you draw the distinction, and why did it matter to write the book that way?
Well, I've been wanting to write a book for a long time because when I walked into the system, I never expected it to be the way it is. And I want other people to understand what they're walking into because you don't get justice. And it's all a hearsay, it's all biased, one-sided, and I want people to be able to be prepared for what to expect. And I want them to look at the evidence, this isn't just my story. This is about what happens when you actually know more than they do. You challenge the system. They will shut you down every way they can.
I'm very familiar with that situation. You wrote about a moment when a family court judge issued a 99-year restraining order against you, not for any harm you caused, but because you knew the law too well. Can you walk us through what happened?
Well, basically, at the time, I was pro se, and they changed the law in 21 to minor guardianship from third-party custody. Well, I did a lot of research and educated myself on that. The whole court was totally messed up. They didn't know what was going on. I understood the law better than they did. So I challenged them on it, and it made them very angry. And I had no idea at the end she was going to even issue a restraining order against me. Nobody knew. There was no motion. It was not on the record during the trial. We had no idea until they showed up at the school and picked up my grandchildren. And they told my grandchildren if they speak to me, I would go to jail. And then I was ordered to leave my house so that they can come and collect their belongings.
That's horrible.
Yes.
One of the most surprising things in the book is what you call the paper trail that never dies, where simply asking CPS for help can create a record that follows a family for decades. Can you please explain how that actually works?
Well, like I say in my book, back in the 90s, I went to the system for help. I never, ever had an investigation with CPS or anything. I had no idea at the time that I was actually dealing with CPS. I thought it was just a social worker. And then in 2005, when they took my grandson, they would not allow me to have placement because they claimed I had a CPS record. And I couldn't understand what they were talking about because I never had anything like that. And then they also claimed I had a felony, which happened to be my ex-husband. No matter what I did, I couldn't prove anything. It was in the record, so that's all that mattered. And then it followed me all the way up through 22 with my custody case. Everything, the whole thing. And Washington state law says any investigation with CPS is supposed to be expunged after 6 years. Well, I contacted an attorney and I asked him about getting my record expunged. And he told me that the statute doesn't apply to me because I never actually had an investigation. So what that means is if you call and ask for help, they build a record against you and it never goes away. It stays there and it will follow your children. It will follow your grandchildren. And it's unbelievable because we're supposed to ask for help. and it turns into a CPS record? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense.
And people would never know that until you get entangled into the system. That's when you will
Exactly.
found out about that. You spent 4 years as an advocate with Washington Families United before any of what happened to your own grandchildren took place. Looking back, did that experience prepare you for your own case, or did living it teach you things advocacy never could have?
Well, my personal experience was the key, and I got involved with Washington Families United was when they claimed I had a CPS record, and that was when I decided I'm going to educate myself. I need to find out how to deal with this system. I don't want other families to go through this. And so I started advocating with them. It was the best experience I ever had because I walked in there not knowing anything. And they basically told me, look, you are smart. You know exactly how to do it. You educate yourself. We have faith in you and we will be there with you. And so became very good at it. I got involved with the Office of Public Defense, the Child's Abandonment Office. I had meetings with the head CPS people. But I decided to go back to school and get my bachelor's degree because I had judges and attorneys tell me, you're not qualified. You don't have any education. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll get an education. So I went back and I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and that taught me a lot about how the government works. I went to Christian schools, so I never had I had Bible. So it was very, very educational, and it really was beneficial because it taught me all the different branches of the government and how it worked. And then with my education, now they had nothing they could claim because I had an education and I also had a lot of experience.
That is so awesome. I love that. Your book renames parental alienation as children's alienation in one chapter. Why was that distinction important enough to change the title of an entire chapter?
Well, from my experience, people are always saying it's parental alienation, it's grandparent alienation, it's father's rights, and bottom line is children's rights. Okay. The children are the ones that are suffering and paying the price. And I think that the reason we've gone so many years without having real change is because people look at it like it's a family problem. It's adults fighting. And it's not that. It's children. The
Mm-mm.
children are the ones that are ultimately being alienated from their family. You take a father from them, and that takes their whole
Mm-mm.
side of the family away from them, or
The
a mother.
children are defenseless. The children are
They are.
defenseless, and someone has to fight for them because they're not able to fight for themselves.
That's right. And the courts do not want the children to have a voice at all. They want them silenced. And that is not okay. My granddaughter at 15 years old could go get an abortion without telling me. Okay. But she cannot have a right to an attorney or speak in court. But if she gets in trouble in juvenile court, she can go get an attorney. In fact, after she was removed from my care, her mother tried to put her in the mental hospital to deprogram her because she missed me so much. And she couldn't believe it. They immediately gave her an attorney. And she told me when I was able to go to a visit, she told me, she said, Grandma, I want to be a lawyer. I don't understand. Why couldn't I have an attorney in court with you? But when Mom tried to do this, they gave me an attorney. And she was so nice. That judge was nice. I want to be an attorney now.
That's
I mean,
great.
you can't say a child has rights here, but they don't have rights here. When a
That
child
is
gets to be a certain age, they should be able to have a voice.
And that doesn't make sense at all, but we all know from experience that is exactly how it is.
Yes.
You wrote about constitutional doctrines, things like judicial immunity and domestic relations exception, that makes it nearly impossible to hold a family court judge accountable. For someone who has never heard these terms before, how would you explain how they matter, why they matter?
Well, it's interesting because when I was advocating, I had so many families tell me they are violating my constitutional rights. How are they getting away with this? And I never understood it myself. I couldn't answer it because it didn't make any sense. And so when in 2024, a thing called Chevron Doctrine was overturned, I did not really understand what that was at the time, but everything inside me told me that is going to be beneficial for our courts. And so I really didn't pay much attention to it until I started writing my book. When I started writing my book, I started researching. And that's when I came up with 5 doctrines that were made federally by federal judges. They're not in the Constitution to basically prevent federal court from intervening in custody cases. Okay. But what it is divorce, alimony, or visitation. Okay. We're not talking about that when we're talking about family court. We're talking about constitutional rights. They're not only violating the federal, they're violating our state rights.
The state also, any
Yes.
constitutional right are violated in your local family court system.
That's right. And there's nothing you can do about it. The appeals court, I went to a children's conference several years ago, and that's when I realized all the judges, the social workers, the attorneys of the state are best friends. They all are at this conference, buddy buddy. They're not going to go against each other. The only remedy we have is to go into federal court. And these doctrines need to be overturned to block us. And people need to stop talking about custody issues and talk about our constitutional rights when it comes to family court. And most importantly, the children's constitutional right. And when I was dealing with my case, when my grandkids were denied attorneys, my attorney tried to appeal immediately. And the appeals court came back and said, sorry, we can't hear it until you have final orders. Well, by the time you have final orders, there's already damage to that child. And there's a youngster, I think that's how you say it, I'm not quite sure, doctrine that blocks the federal courts from hearing anything that does not have a final order in state court. And
That's
in my
great
opinion,
information.
yeah, and in my opinion, that needs to be gone. And the minute my attorney appealed, it should have automatically stayed the case until the appeals court heard it. Because
that's a higher court. That is a higher court
yes,
than the state court, but they have these things locked up at the state level, and it feels like you're in a box. I mean, you're unable to go anywhere until they get finished destroying your life at the state level.
and then even
That's
then
what it
you have
feels like.
yeah, and then even then you have nowhere to go. And I've had so many conversations with other advocates and other attorneys, and they all say, well, if you want to get federal, you have to change the Constitution. Well, no, these are not in the Constitution. These were handmade by federal judges. And family court gets federal money. So the federal government is already involved in family court.
They sure are. That's no
And we need to
question.
hold them accountable. We need to do what they're doing, like with immigration right now, with these sanctuary cities, to where if you don't want to follow federal law, then you're not going to get your federal money. And when the courts want to violate our federal rights, they should not get federal money.
Agree. Maybe if that happens, maybe if there's a possibility that they would change things. Because when people hear dollar signs, they seem to straighten up.
Well, none of that. I know for a fact if that judge on my case knew the minute she denied my grandchildren attorneys, I could immediately appeal and it would be stayed. She wouldn't have done what she did. She did that because she knew there was nothing I could do about it. However, they went further, okay? They made sure I could not win an appeal because this law that was passed could have set precedents in Washington State. They couldn't have that. So what they did, which I found out when I was writing my book, they went in and they converted my case. They removed me as petitioner and put me as respondent. They changed the name from Harris Preston to Lockridge Harris, which Lockridge was my daughter's name, and getting married doesn't change the case name, but they changed my case from third-party custody to minor guardianship. So that way, when the appeal court got that record, they got a record showing my daughter filed the petition for guardianship, which meant she had the right to dismiss it. And see, they didn't like third-party custody because the only way you can get rid of third-party custody is to prove the person is unfit. They could not prove me unfit. They could not do nothing. The only way they could do it is to convert my custody, which is a fraud on the court. They illegally changed the whole thing of my custody, wiped out 10 years of custody.
I'm not surprised at all. That sounds all too familiar
Yep.
in the family court system. That is the confusion, the gaslighting, the manipulation. That is exactly how that court system operates.
And they get away with it because we have these doctrines and I'm sorry, but a judge, when they purposely violate your rights and the law, they should not have immunity at all, period.
Agree with that. You've worked with several other advocates and experts who appear throughout the book, like Marianne Petrie, Vicky Sims, and Rod McCall. Was there a moment in gathering their stories that changed how you understood your own?
Yes and no. I mean, I've been doing this so long that I've known that every case is the same. It just has a different name.
That's
But
correct. I believe that.
not mentioning you are in my book. I have to say, I was very impressed with you when you had said the important thing about being an advocate is not to be needed. That is exactly what I've been saying for years. I want to help you. I want to educate you. I want to make it to where you don't need me. That is the key to being an advocate.
Thank you so much.
I also want to mention Carrie Ann George.
Go
It was
ahead.
really, really good because I developed seizures from all the stress. And I had not talked to anybody that knew anything about that. And when I was interviewing her, she knew exactly what I was talking about. And it made me feel good to know that it's something that people are aware of because I thought I was crazy.
You are not crazy. I developed the autoimmune disease fighting in family court. I developed a thyroid issue. You're not crazy at all. It's the stress and the trauma that you have to go through. And it's like a autonomic response. Your body has to respond somehow. And it responds with illness because it's a great amount of stress.
Yes. Yeah. People do not have a clue. I mean, I'm sorry. Do not judge anybody that has been in family court. And another thing, don't look at those family court records because 90% of them are lies. Most of the stuff that goes on in family court is nothing but lies.
It's hearsay. It's called hearsay.
Not evidence, nothing.
Right. For a parent or grandparent who is in the middle of a CPS investigation or a custody battle right now, listening to this conversation today, what is the first thing you want them to do?
Well, the first thing I want people to start doing is start trying to work out their problems instead of running to court. Because when you go to court, you have a winner and a loser. And the loser is the child. And people need to start working those out. However, if you can't, the best thing to do is make sure you document everything. Visits, phone calls, counselor meetings, whatever. But always document. And
not only document, I believe educating yourself, because when you have to trust another person and you have no idea what's supposed to happen and you're going in there blind, you're giving that other individual, an attorney, for example, you're giving them leeway to do whatever they want, how they want to do it, and you're unfamiliar with the process, and that is definitely not good.
No, and another thing, these providers, do not trust them because they will act like they're on your side to gain your trust, and then when they go into court, they'll lie. And, people need to understand. I mean, up until I was dealing with my grandkids, I only dealt with CPS. I never dealt with family court. And I walked into family court thinking, well, I've had these kids 10 years. I have all this evidence to show how well I've done. I have nothing to worry about. Boy, was I wrong. What a rude wake-up call. And because I was educated, they went after me with everything they had.
They will send a pack of wolves after you.
Oh, yeah.
It's just unbelievable how many people that will turn on you and that will just, you're like a helpless lamb or something, and there's a pack of wolves just coming after you. You're just one individual. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, and I felt all alone. And, these attorneys, they act more like CPS workers. They're not working for you. They are working for the court.
Although you pay them, they are not working for you.
Nope.
They work for the system.
Yep.
People really need to understand that.
Yes, they do.
You named your newsletter and this whole effort, Families Matter. What do you want that movement to actually accomplish in the next 5 years?
I want to see that every child that is involved in family court has constitutional rights and has a right to be heard. You know what? You may not like the father or the mother, but guess what? At one time, you did. You had a child together. That child did not ask to be born. It's time to learn how to work together. And that includes grandparents. I mean, I did everything in my power to help my daughter, but it got to the point where I had to choose the kids because helping her was hurting my health. And I did everything. And, the courts have it to where if you file for a motion for visitation or anything, then you have mandatory where you have to go to mediation. But if one of the parties that don't want to do that, then okay, no problem. We won't worry about it. And people need to start putting the kids first. It is in that child's best interest, unless there is clear abuse or alienation, whatever, that child have their family. I mean, my God, families are so separated. That is why we have such a mental health problem among our youth. They have no support system. None.
If someone reads only one chapter of this book, which one would you want it to be and why?
Chapter 8 again, that talks about children's rights. Children have a right to be safe and secure in their own home. And my children, my grandchildren, the schools, everybody knew. They were terrified of their mother. They told them constantly. They told the police constantly. Nobody cared. Nobody did anything to protect them. What is really interesting about the restraining order is the judge claims she did not want to traumatize my grandkids by having them testify against their mother. So instead, she traumatized them by having a 9th grader and a senior ripped out of school with the police and told, if they contact me, I will go to jail. That's how screwed up our court system is.
Linda, this has been such an important conversation. The book is called They're Not Here to Help, An Advocate's Guide to Surviving Family Court, CPS, and the Systems That Profit from Families. Available now on Amazon. You can find Linda's work on the Family Matters newsletter. Her website is familiesmatter.info. Linda talks about these same topics every week. Linda, where else can people find you and follow what you are building?
We have a Facebook page, Families Matter, and we also have a TikTok, Families Matter.
Awesome. Again, I would like to say thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to get to know you.
Thank you. Likewise. And thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you. You too.